Hey, David T.S. Wood here, and welcome to My Extra Mile. Our comment winner is actually a great friend of mine. We haven't hung out in a lot of years. His name's Stephen Munn, or Steve Munn as I call him. He said, yes, it's so true. You gotta dig deep and run that marathon. He was talking about my show, Truth and Lies, which is talking about how a lie will run a sprint. It gets to people fast, while the truth runs marathons, right? So again, if you haven't seen that show or heard that show, go for it. He says, my favorite quote of yours that I use all the time is, environment is stronger than willpower. And it's so true. Changed my life when I understood that when I change my environment, when I manage my environment, I manage my success. Today's show, again, is one of my philosophies that, most of us overthink everything. We're trying to make the right choice without really understanding that quite often choices we've made that we doubted, or some things that happened to us in the past, we often look back on, a year later, 6 months later, 3 years later, 5 years, oh my gosh, that was the best thing that ever happened. So the show's called Stop Thinking and Start Flipping, and I'm gonna introduce to you something I do almost every single day that really changed my life and really allows me to navigate life in such an easy and elegant and non-stressful way. So enjoy the show, and you know what to do. And you know what? If you can push the notification button, that will allow you to know when new shows drop, so you're the first to hear about it. You don't have to listen to them all. At least you know it's there, and you can decide, watch the little trailer, just decide if it's the show you want to listen to. All right, thanks so much, and we'll definitely see you on the other side. It's interesting. I had a text from a really good friend of mine. He's a very, very famous author. I think he's 16 books he's published. And he was sending me a example of 2 different logos that he wanted to use, and was asking my opinion. And so I texted him back, and they were both great logos, very, very different. One was very boxy, one was very whimsical, but very, very much in alignment with his particular brand. And so I said to him, I said, when I have a decision to make, I just flip a coin, and it just takes me out of the equation. And his reaction was quite like, oh, yeah. And he really believes in that kind of stuff, and I do. And I thought what I'd do is I'd maybe talk about, the greatest coin flips that I've ever had to do. And I always carry this. This is a Burt's beeswax. So it's lip balm, And I've always carried these. They've actually stopped making them. But that's the heads, that's the tails. I always have one in my pocket. Wherever you go in the world, just ask me and I'll pull one out for you. And I buy them online now, like I buy the 12 or 24 at a time, because I always want to have them. And I've carried them for years. And there's, obviously lip balm. You'll often see me, if you see me on stage, putting lip balm on my lips. But you'll also, the reason I carry it is this reminder that, the outcome of decisions is something that very rarely do we really understand what that outcome should be, right? Or what it's going to be. And our decisions are really about making a choice in the moment with what we understand for something that's going to happen in the future that we don't understand. So for me, I rarely sort of, I would say that I used to get very, what was the word? I used to overthink and want to try and make the right decision. So often the decisions took a long time. We're talking about just a couple of days ago, I'm redoing my office and turning it more into a studio for filming purposes, and we had to choose a color of some curtains. I know this is a very, very small decision, and I'll give you different examples. And in the end, Denise and I were talking, and there were these 2 choices. I said, easy. I'll pull this out. I said, what do you want, heads or tails? And so heads is the darker one, tails the light one. Do you agree? She said, yep, flipped it up. It was a head. We went with that. And I never thought about it again. Because ultimately, and by the way, there's an evolution of the coin flip, which I love to get into, because often I'll say to people with big decisions, and they can't decide. They're sort of caught in a quandary. And I'm talking about major decisions about buying a house and buying a car, or, sometimes, even crazier ones about, a new direction, leaving a job. I mean, major decisions that really, are in the mind, and there's kind of the pros and cons, and there's the, oh, what if, all these different things that go on. So the evolution of the coin flip for me is this. I'll say to someone, especially I'm doing one-on-one coaching, I'll say, just flip the coin. All right? And then notice how you feel, because subconsciously we kind of know where we want to go. And, and sometimes you flip a coin and it's heads and you're like, yes! It's like you won something. And sometimes you flip a coin, you're like, oh, crap. And it's almost like, you kind of know. So what happens after the coin flip is notice what's viscerally happening in your body when one of them wins. And it just eliminates, for me, the waste of time of attempting to create or choose the right thing for the future, a future I can't possibly see, where I can trust this. And if for some reason, and this is sometimes what happens with me, I'll say best of three, best of three. So, that means that's telling me that I didn't like the decision, that subconsciously I was like, yeah, I could go either way. But then when I flip it and I go, oh, maybe I'll do best of three, that's telling me immediately that I really am leaning towards the other decision. And, and I'm just getting all the noise is getting in the way of pulling the trigger. So now I just trust it. And I don't know if you've ever seen, and maybe I don't even know if it's available anymore, but I've done videos where I'm traveling in a country, and at every single crossroads, I have to flip a coin. Heads goes right, tails goes left. And I always end up in these extraordinarily beautiful places with crazy beautiful people. And it's just like, I can't write this script, but what I can do is I can talk myself out of these adventures. I can talk myself out of things because of logic or because of using, and this is what's really interesting for me, is using the experience I've had in the past doesn't always equate to making a great choice for the future, especially if I'm stuck a bit or I'm maybe fear-based, because fear is an interesting thing, right? Because, if you have a fear-based decision, should I, shouldn't I? And the question why you shouldn't is because you're afraid you're going to lose something, or afraid you're going to take too big a risk, or afraid that, you may end up in the wrong place. And by the way, when I bought this house, coin flip, I'm like, hey, I've been thinking about it. I'm going to buy another house or not. Boom, yep. Went for a drive, discovered this place quite by accident. And, I mean, look, it's arguably one of the most beautiful views, but guess what? Ding, 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 ding. The decision to change, the decision to move came from me, like, should I, shouldn't I? I had a beautiful farm. I loved living out of the town. I loved this, having all these acres of ground. I loved rescuing trees. But I realized that my life, there was something, we were a little bit stuck. And so, boom. Yeah, okay, so I'm gonna go today and start looking, and in that action, discovered this place quite by chance, in a place that I would never have thought to buy. I took a wrong road, drove up here. In fact, I could tell a whole story about this house from a coin flip. So for me, it's the reason I carry it with me and I never leave the home without it is because it's become really a guiding friend. I trust this as much as I trust my decision process. And I can always hear whether if there's a deeper root that I'm really leaning a different way, and because I really want something, but maybe I'm afraid to pull the trigger. When I pull that and it takes me away from it, I'm like, ooh, I wish, ooh. Then I know. I'm just like, hey, you know what? Even though this said heads, I may sometimes, and it happens, rarely now, because I just trust it. I even trust that my instincts may or could be wrong when it comes to one of these 50-50 splits. But what's interesting is because how the brain works, and the brain does everything it can to keep us within the realm of our comfort zone. So, and again, if we understand the characters, the psycho-cybernetic mechanism, which I call the psycho, every time we step out of our comfort zone, it floods our body with chemicals, and we interpret, this is an important word, interpret it as fear, apprehension, doubt, and uncertainty. Fear, apprehension, doubt, and uncertainty, right? And so, the fact that, our brain, every time we step out of our comfort zone, is attacking us chemically and sort of pushing us back into the box, because the brain's job is not to make us rich and happy. The brain's job is to keep us safe, emotionally safe and physically safe. And that's why, some emotional decisions are as hard to make as a physical decision, right? So this idea then that the brain isn't our friend in this process is that we will naturally lean, unless we're in the habit, and this is really important, the habit of challenging our comfort zone, which most people aren't, but we will lean naturally, and the decision process sounds logical. Oh yeah, I mean, a lot of people won't move house. You know why? Because they have so much shit, right? And so the idea of cleaning up their life and getting rid of stuff is enough of a reason to stay stuck in a place instead of changing and starting. And I mean, even though I live in this most beautiful place, I keep telling people, I could sell and move. There's always another adventure, and life is so short. So the idea of being able to make change and go for something. But imagine the limiting factor of, the work. But the work of getting rid of crap. And normally when you go through stuff, I did a whole show on this, the 5-minute challenge. I think it's called the Uncluttered Mind. You should, maybe we'll even talk about it. If I do this, do you think someone's going to put a link in there? We'll find out. I'm doing this. We'll see if someone really watches this and puts a link in. We'll see what happens. If not, I'm just doing this because I'm dancing. I just love to dance, all right? I'm having a crazy time here. So, what was I talking about? Completely forgot. Oh, yeah, the uncluttered mind. But the idea of, that we stay stuck because of a logical decision of, there's so much thing. But what I found is when I get rid of those things, there's this, it's like I can breathe again. There's this kind of breath, and again, making a decision to move home with a flip of a coin and to have a whole new adventure, and then what it led to, and the remarkable kind of journey that occurred because of that. It's like, it's mind-blowing. So I do think that, again, you got to be careful about understanding how the mind will always pull us back into safety, and safety isn't where we feel alive. Most of us don't feel alive. And I'll give you an example. I know I don't normally talk about this, but I know a lot of people talk about traditions, and I love traditions. I don't have many of them, but I love traditions. I understand why people, families get together, but they do the same thing year after, the same meal year after year. And it kind of like, if we understand how the comfort zone works, it's not like the family gets together and every year they say, let's get together and let's do something completely different. Let's make it so that it stands out. And so one of the reasons when I was backpacking around the world, and probably where I started to lean towards this versus this, trusting, an arbitrary flip versus my limited thinking, right? Came from my backpacking days, around the world. But one of the reasons I did that, I said I was going to spend Christmas every single year in a different country. And the reason for that was because I wanted them to stand out, because all of the Christmases I remembered all looked the same tree, came out of the same attic, the same decorations hung in the same place, the same process each, Christmas morning, and I get that. I get it for kids especially, but as we get older, and I just wonder again about that sort of courage to embrace change and to allow ourselves to be steered by something as arbitrary as a coin, or in my case, I would, if I didn't have Burt's Bees. It's a little advertisement for one of the best lip balms on the planet, Burt's Bees, right? If I didn't have that, I'd carry a big chip. It would be a different coin. It would be like one of those coins they use in casinos, something big, and so it's significant. I always feel this in my pocket. It's kind of like a reminder that that I always have choice, and if I'm willing and courageous enough to allow the choices to be arbitrary, that I can find these incredible and beautiful adventures that seem to just sort of occur every time I take a step into the unknown. And because it's a muscle that I particularly built of loving the unknown, I love, even when I go to restaurants, some of you know this already, I let the waitress choose or the waiter choose their favorite thing, and I just love the surprise. Don't tell me, just bring it, and I'll eat whatever's there. What if you don't like it? I promise you I'll like it. I love the journey of it. Now, have I ever had a meal that yeah, it's happened where it wasn't my favorite meal, but I love the process, because in the discovery I discovered something maybe I don't like. I mean, that's well enough, right? But so again, and what I suppose the show's really about is is where, when you're, or where are you stuck? Where's an area of your life that you feel that you're kind of like at this crossroads where you could potentially turn left or right? You're not sure. You're in a job that you hate. You're in a relationship that's not working. There's all these different things where you're kind of like feeling stuck. And logically, you're using logic to keep yourself stuck. It makes sense, like for example, oh yeah, it's just so hard to find a job right now, or it's not the best relationship, but at least I am in a relationship. Whatever those kind of crazy conversations we have are. Yet if you flip a coin and you say, look, and I know, and we talk about relationships here as well. I know it's crazy that I'm saying this out loud, but I'm saying if you're at a junction, if you already know that you've got a decision to make and you can't make it, right? And suddenly you get guided by this silly coin or this tin, and you take that step. What I found to be true for me personally, and again, whether it happens for you or not, is every time without fail, every time without question, even if I resisted it in the beginning or struggled with it in the beginning or was like, oh shit, or was afraid about it in the beginning, I don't have that fear anymore, but I used to in the beginning, because I was like, what if I made the wrong choice? What if I get it wrong? So I was always attempting to get shit right. And all I did by doing that was stay stuck in one spot because I was too afraid to make the wrong choice. And so, I suppose the these are new teeth. I'm just breaking them in. The idea of the power of trusting ourselves or trusting an arbitrary thing to steer us or guide us. Listen, you can always come back, right? You can always re-choose. But what I found to be true is once I take that step, like when I decided to move and to sell the house, right? And my neighbor, by the way, had been on the market for about 2 years and was on the market in the end 4 years, just over 4 years, the neighbor at the farm. I sold my house in 4 days. Now, it was kind of weird how I did it. It was kind of unusual, but that's kind of how it is. I flip a coin, make a decision, start looking, find this place. Now I've got 2 homes, and just so happens that, and in fact, I'll tell you the story because it's quite a good one. So we put a little sign up in the yard, and it's a 12-acre property, right? And I look outside the window one day, and there's a woman standing in the garden. And so I wander out, and I said, hey, how you doing? She said, and she was a little bit nervous, and she said, oh, sorry. I said, no. I said, what's up? She said, oh, I was just looking at the sign. I said, oh, you're interested in the property? She said, yeah. She said, look, my husband and I, he's an ophthalmologist, and, we've never bought a house together before. We have 4 kids, and 4 or 5. I think they have 5 now, but I think they had 4 at the time. And I said, great. I said, well, listen, do you want to have a look? And she said, well, I haven't called a realtor. I said, don't worry about it. I said, if you want to, I said, in fact, do this. I said, because I can see that you're a bit nervous. And she was from the East Coast. She was a newfie. And I'm like, she's so spirited and beautiful and great. And I could feel it. I said, why don't you bring your husband and the kids and come and have a picnic here and just see if you like it. You don't even have to look at anything yet, but just show up. And she did. She shows up, and I see him outside having a picnic. And I can't remember if I took a bottle of wine. I think I took some stuff. And they're out there having a picnic. And they did that a couple of times. And in the end, it was so funny. We agree. Finally, they say we're going to buy the house. And I said to my lawyer, who's a really close friend of mine, I said, hey, Richard, I said, it looks like we sold the house. He said, but Dave, you've got no paperwork. You've got no deposit, no nothing. I said, I know, but I trust these people. They're gonna follow through. He says, I know, but why don't you ask him for a deposit? I said, okay. So I phone him up. I say, Andrew, I said, any chance I can get a deposit from you? He's like, yeah. He said, well, if I send $400,000, would that be enough? I think it was 400 now. Again, I may be wrong, but it was a lot. My lawyer's like, are you insane? This guy gave you that much money he doesn't have a contract. There's nothing to say. I said, I know, don't worry about it. It's okay, right? Anyway, so then we get closer to the moving day, all right? And I had this place a month before I'd sold this other place, right? And so I said to him, he calls me up. He says, Dave, I have a request. I said, sure, what is it, Andrew? Now remember, he sent me this money. We still have a contract written up. We still have no legal paperwork. He says, is there any chance that we can move in and we can do the paperwork for the next calendar year? He said, because it's going to save me a boatload in taxes. I said, yeah, sure. So then I phoned my lawyer up. I said, Richard, guess what? He said, what? He said, I know you, the guy that he gave me the 400 grand. He said, yeah. I said, he wants to move in the house without completing, and he wants to do that so that all the dates are, so he's going to moving in without finalizing on it. Are you nuts? It was like that. Anyway, they live there, and they've gone on to build a beautiful property out. It's gorgeous up there. I was up there the other day having a look. But again, when it comes down to that story, and here's an interesting thing. I don't know why. I know I'm babbling a little bit here, but when I was doing the renovation here, she popped over one day, and she came in. I was showing her around, and she stood over in the corner here, and she's like, Dave, she says, you see that roof line there? And she's talking about over my grand piano in here. She said the roof line went up like into a what do you call it? An apex? Is that what they call it? And she said, I think that's all wrong. She said, have you considered putting a flat roof in there? I said, I hadn't. And this is like, we're getting close to the end of the build. And I'm like, hold on a sec. So I phoned my builder up. I said, hey, Paul, I said, any chance, can you show up here with some plywood? And I said, I want to block in the ceiling and have a look how it looks. And in the end, we went with that. So, again, there's so many stories have come from this wonderful coin flip. And not only the house and this place I live that has become such a joy and, again, arguably one of the most beautiful views in Kelowna, but also, the relationships that have developed with the people who bought, how they bought, the crazy kind of twist and turn. Fearless, because fearless was just the way I prefer to be. And here's another thing. I told you about that month. This is how crazy this all is. So that month, when I had this place, it was like July, something like that, and I still had the farm. And so I have a friend who rents homes for vacation home rentals. And so he said, I remember I hadn't even moved in. He's like, can I rent the house out for a month? I said, for sure. Anyway, it was like $50,000. So amongst all this, I made 50 grand, a couple of beautiful friends, with a twist and turn, some great stories, and now a great house that is has become, with her help and her guidance of changing roof lines, it's even more beautiful than it was before. Coming back to this idea of a coin flip. Now I could give you hundreds of examples of where I've chosen Croatia. I was in England. I'm thinking, where should I go? Coin flip, right? And I fly to Croatia for a walkabout. That's where I go on my own. I just go for a walkabout. I meet my girlfriend at the airport. We miss a flight. We spend a night in Frankfurt, and 4.5 years ago, right? And the coin flip, how could I possibly know? I couldn't. That me choosing, it looks like I'm going on a trip to Croatia. I was booked to come home. I diverted into Croatia. I went on this wild, wonderful journey. And along the way, I miss a flight in Frankfurt, which it could appear to be crazy. What do? I meet a girl that night that ends up becoming my girlfriend. And we have these beautiful 4.5 years of adventures coming back to and again, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of examples. But I suppose it goes hand in hand. The one part is the courage to flip. The second is the courage to follow through on the flip. And the third is the openness to allow what's happening, because if we only take the experience we have, because remember that great saying, experience is something we get just after we need it, right? So with our previous experience, we're not already ready for what's happening in front of us because we haven't seen it before, we're not open to it, so we tend to want to go back. The brain will do everything it can to go back to where we were. So again, with that being said, I'm going to wrap this one up because I like to keep these a little bit shorter for you. Anything you want to talk about, anything, just please ask questions in the comments, and it'll steer me towards shows, whether solo shows or guests. And also, if you want to join me on social media, David T.S. Wood on Instagram, David T.S. Wood on Facebook. I occasionally tweet. I don't really understand the whole world yet, but I'll get there. But thanks for listening in, and just go buy a coin of some kind, put it in your pocket. Even if you don't use it, keep it there. And the next time you're at a decision point, flip it and notice how you feel right after. And trust that initial feeling and go with it and see where it leads you. And I want to hear about some of those stories. So we'll definitely see you on the other side.